Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Talk Road to Cheltenham. It's our now annual mashup between Ruby Walsh and myself from the Road to Cheltenham team and from the Let's Talk racing team, Andrew Blair-White and Joshua Stacey. Over the next 45 minutes it's going to be a frantic shooting from the hip, opinion-based show about all the top class jump racing we have seen over the last 4 days. As you can see, we are here at Leopardstown and I'm not going to lie to you, this show will be in 2 parts. The first 2/3 we are recording in the morning before racing on the final day, the Sunday, and the last third afterwards. And you'll be able to tell the difference because of the light. Small and far away. Small and far away. Right, let's get on with the show, shall we? Let's start by talking about the open chasers. But first off, before we break into that, Andrew, now, old fogies like myself and Ruby here, we need to learn...
By the way, the young fogies don't get the Father Ted joke.
Did you get the Father Ted joke?
No. Lost on me.
Good start. That's for you of my generation at home. Anyway, look it up. So how do we talk? How do we talk to young people? Because your channel, Andrew, is aimed at talking to young people about horse racing and getting them into it. What's the key?
Yeah, very much so. Look, we started up on YouTube a couple of years ago. Seem to have built up plenty of people under the age of kind of 25 to 30, trying to get them into racing and probably trying to break that barrier. There's obviously an awful lot of jargon, an awful lot of people like yourselves that are absolutely superb at showing off the sport, and we're trying to do that, I suppose, to just a slightly younger audience.
I felt there was a boat coming there that didn't come.
It was a silent bird. Right, now let's go on with the show, shall we? Let's start by talking about we're going to go in various divisions, so we're going to start off with the staying chasers. I think we have to start out with the king of Leopardstown, the king of Cheltenham as it currently stands, the horse that, certainly for me, Josh, going into yesterday, the Savills Chase, was the horse that everybody had to get to. He was up against his stable companion Factor File. What's your thoughts on the Gold Cup and the staying division coming out of yesterday and the King George?
It's difficult to have many thoughts other than Galopin Des Champs was seriously impressive. Factor File was the young pretender, beat him at Punchestown, but we know that Galopin Des Champs isn't probably seen at his best, especially over 2.5 at Punchestown. Never really put his best foot forward there. But yesterday I was so jealous of everyone here. I was watching it back home and you just want to be there with performances like that, going from the front, jumping them silly, kicking on again. He almost had a second win coming up the straight, and he powered through the line. And the gallop that they went to do that at the line, it's just a very, very special horse. And it's interesting to see what they're going to do with Factor File now, but Galopin Des Champs is going to take an awful lot of beating in a third Gold Cup.
Do you see anything from the King George that would potentially come out? Because Banbridge totally unexposed over 3 miles.
Yeah, I actually thought the Gold Cup horses, the ones that might feature in a Gold Cup, were probably the ones that were placed. I thought Le Homme Pressé ran really well and back in third. Ile Francais jumped really, really well from the front. He really got into a rhythm very similar to last year. And I didn't actually expect Banbridge to come out of the pack and nail him. But I think the King George this year, for me, looked like a real horses for courses. Ile Francais is proven at Kempton. He was so good in the Quarto Style last year. Banbridge beat a real course specialist in Pictoria in the Silvagnaca Conti Chase. So 2 horses that really act around Kempton, both coming to the front. And I definitely thought that Kempton's an interesting track. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to pick Rumi's brains on that. But 2 horses that seem to act really well around Kempton versus horses that might not necessarily... be suited to that test, but could reverse that form come Cheltenham.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start again with Galopin Des Champs, though, Ruby. For me, he is now consistently the best staying chaser since Quarto Star. You would have a unique perspective on that. What do you think?
He definitely is. There's no doubt about it. And wins, loses a bit like Quarto Star did as well, and keeps coming back. Yesterday, it was great to be here, and it was great, Lydia, you were here, but like even the up second and third floors here, the balconies were full everywhere when he came back into the winners' enclosure, and that was wonderful to see. But his performance was brilliant. But I felt before it even started, Factor 5 was on the back foot. He stomped around the parade ring here yesterday like his tail was on fire. He was a bit better going to post, but when he jumped off 4 horses behind him, he never spat it out. And for me, it was never going to be a contest then. He had to relax and get into a rhythm, and he didn't. He just charged around in Mark Walsh's hands, and I always felt from flagfall that it was Galopin Des Champs races to lose then. And he was brilliant, and I loved him in the last 100 yards when he didn't slow down. You can't say he went any quicker, but he didn't slow down. Just that surge of energy that keeps him going at the same pace. He's a fabulous racehorse, so uncomplicated, so professional, and he was brilliant to watch.
Mark Walsh said afterwards that he's never going to beat Galopin Des Champs if he doesn't settle. And Willie Mullins was kind of, yeah, we can do that, but I don't see him reversing form over an extra two furlongs.
I don't know. It's very hard to say he will, but I just wouldn't write it off. And I think maybe put earplugs in him, ride him a little differently. Like, to be fair to Mark Walsh, what could he do yesterday other than what he did, which was sit 3 lengths behind Galopin Des Champs? I think if you were having another go at it, you'd actually go behind everyone and get Factifile to spit it out and hope they keep you close enough. Now, that didn't work in the King George. A lot of people got behind the real Whacker and Brave Man's Game, and they weren't quite good enough to keep them close enough to Ile Francais. So it is a gamble, but I just think that Factifile has to learn to settle, but that also could be a lack of racing. He went straight from bumpers to chasing. He doesn't have that many runs under his belt, and with more racing, that youthful enthusiasm will come out of him.
Yeah. And he was up against, I think, the hardest chaser in training. Andrew, what's your take on this division?
I know he was absolutely superb. As Ruby said, there's very few horses that capture the imagination at a place like Leopardstown. You're thinking of the Honeysuckles, Hurricane Flies of recent years. But the fact that you have so many people here to see him, you felt that there was a real racing crowd here yesterday. Very knowledgeable people wanting to see a really good horse. The race was finished by the time they went round this past the stands first time out. I thought Paul Townend was getting it the way he wanted to get it. He said after the race that he thought Galopin Des Champs could jump better. Now, I thought he jumped pretty well. I wouldn't necessarily know, but I thought he jumped pretty fine to me, but he was fantastic. And I suppose the fact that he beat Factifile was still well in front of the Gentleman's Games and the Hartwoods of the world, who were probably the type of horses you wanted to see in third and fourth. So it was all the right horses, all in the right order, really, for what you'd think the division should be.
Okay, I have to confess I made a total fool of myself when watching Galopin Des Champs, honestly. If there had been a camera on me, I would never live it down. From like 2 out, I was basically screaming him home. Can we now finally put to bed the idea that he isn't at his best on good to soft ground? I mean, come on.
Who thought that?
Well, it was the chat, or every time when he runs at Punchestown, it's, oh no, this time of year the ground is wrong. It's either the track or the ground.
Coming out of a Gold Cup, it's a very hard thing to do. Gold Cup is a 3.25 miles. To be as good at wherever the next race is, move it from Punchestown and put it back in Cheltenham, you're still not going to be as good after the Gold Cup. So, look, I just think it's wonderful that Willie didn't campaign Album Photo that way. Probably wasn't resolute enough, maybe not good enough, but he is campaigning Galopin Des Champs the way Paul campaigned Kero Star, Denman, and it's great to see a horse of that calibre. He'll come back here for the DRF, he'll go to Cheltenham in March, he'll turn up at Punchestown in April, providing he's okay. I just think that's great. That's what racing needs.
And it's an incredible training performance as well. As a novice, he was so exuberant. To harness that exuberance and get him, 2 years ago in the Gold Cup, he was almost dead last and ridden cold. Now he relaxed a bit too much. He went forward. He was so good. And to be honest with you, I think if it's to go back and win a third Gold Cup, it's up there in Willie Mullins' greatest ever achievements. But getting him off 142 and a Martin Pipe was probably number one. That's a serious performance.
Were you not watching this show?
I think you have to go forward with him now. That's how he gets into a rhythm. But you're right, that change in his temperament, his maturity essentially allows you to ride him that way. I'm going to throw a wild one at you, one that I think there's been an overreaction to from the King George, and that's, I'll look at you, Andrew. Grey Dawning. Right, jumped right, made a mistake. Sorry, jumped left, made a mistake at the first. Goes left at his fences, never got into a rhythm at Kempton at all. Tried to make a move, probably at the wrong time as well. Might have a mark on from the Betfair Chase. He's now 33-1 for the Gold Cup. He can hit the frame, can't he?
I suppose he can. You'd think they'll still go down the Gold Cup route because they've Protectorat for the Ryanair. I suppose if he was mine, I know you only get one shot at a Gold Cup, but is he not a Ryanair horse?
I don't feel he is. No, you think he needs shorter?
I just think if you let him roll in a 2-5 race and get him going a little bit like they did in the Turners Novice last year, where he was on the pace, that he just would suit that sort of... You look at the Haydock race, I know he was on deplorable ground, but you didn't look at the last furlong and think he needed another 2.
Okay.
It was on heavy ground. Come on now, let's get rid of the lingo. You're talking to a younger audience. Deplorable, wrong word. He was on heavy ground.
It's heavy ground.
I think loads.
I should be better.
So you don't have to be 40 to understand it.
It gets too dramatic.
But anyway, Andrew has segued nicely into what I was going to ask next. Josh, thinking about the staying chasers, is there any horse running in those divisions that you did think, oh, aye, Ryanair for you?
I thought with a King George winner, you'd be very tempted to go to the Gold Cup, but I think Banbridge would have a massive chance if he was to go down to the Ryanair. Ile Francais,
Yeah.
going from the front,
Yeah.
I thought he would be interesting. He'd be the one that possibly would go down that route, but with all the prize money so good in France at that time of year, it's going to be difficult to see them going down.
It is, and whether they keep him focused and sound, given his well-publicised problems. He was brilliant, wasn't he, in the King George, not quite getting home. He's going to be entered in the Queen Mother Champion Chase, the Ryanair and the Gold Cup, said Noel George afterwards.
Noel George is watching Willie Mullins. Stick him in every, see what happens.
But what do you think? I mean, dropping into it has to be, but I can't have him for the Gold Cup. But undulations?
I don't know about the undulations. I thought he was a sight to behold. I thought he made the King George. He was if you love horse racing, to watch how he went about the race. If you love horses, I thought it was fabulous to watch him. But I don't know. He might have been slightly unlucky too, because I'm not sure there were many people would have had the guts to just sit when Paul Townend did facing into the back. I thought the winning ride was brilliant, and I'd say James Reevely was slightly unlucky that Paul Townend happened to be on Banbridge.
Just meeting the last wrong as well.
Yeah, but Banbridge missed the second last. You can cramp it down on the last, but I'm not so sure. All the lengths he gained before the last fence, I just think that if someone had gone chasing, if Banbridge had been shoved early in the back straight to chase Ile Francais, he wouldn't have come home the way he did.
Anything for you for the Ryanair that we've seen?
Possibly Factophile if he doesn't spit it out in his next start. Maybe Gaelic Warrior looked like he might want a little bit further too.
Interesting.
I thought there was a couple of horses that could end up in that mix, but look, we're only in the mid-season. I think the late winter, early spring will shed some more light on it.
Yeah, and of course we've got the Savills New Year's Day chase as well to come, the likes of Monty Star, who we haven't yet seen this season, to be taking part in this division. Right, we've kind of moved into the Ryanair. I'm going to bridge the gap from Ryanair down to Queen Mother Champion Chase over 2 miles, and the horse that topped this division going into Christmas was John Bon. Ruby, have you seen, the horse everyone was looking at was Gaelic Warrior, and it sounds like you've looked at the Paddy Rewards Club Chase, I think I got that right, and thought this horse needs further.
Unless you got a deluge and it was going to be really testing at Cheltenham, yeah, he did look to me like he'd want a little bit further. Look, John Bone topped the division before Christmas, and if anything, he's probably even more solid right now.
He thumped Solness. Did Solness get away from them?
No, but I'd say Solness probably was ridden a little more negatively in the Tingle Creek, which maybe didn't suit him. JJ Slevin got him out handy, a bit of room, kept out in the best of the ground, jumped like a buck and never gave it back to the opposition behind him. So no, I'd say just a change in tactics really suited him, but Solness is still Solness. He's beaten in the 4-3. He's well beaten in the Tingle Creek. Brilliant training performance, and Joseph O'Brien's horses arguably are running above themselves this Christmas.
Yeah, he's had a fantastic Christmas.
I don't know. I'd say Gaelic Warrior will improve. There's no doubt. He did have a hold up early in the season, and he'd have come on a good bit for the run, but he has to improve a good bit.
It was good to soft ground, Andrew, here at Leopardstown, wasn't it? At the most testing you could possibly describe it as good to soft. We're used to having Cheltenham being pretty testing. It can be heavy these days for the Champion Chase. He's a staying 2-miler. I wouldn't, like Ruby, rewriting off for the Champion Chase.
No, I wouldn't either. I'd be giving him another go. Whether they come back here for the Dublin Racing Festival, I don't know. You'd maybe have an Ergamine over in the Clarence House.
I'd say that's the way it'll pan out, yeah.
Yeah, so if he comes back here, you'd fancy him to reverse form with Solness. Solness is a much better horse on decent ground. He did seem to just get a skip on them. I thought it was a very encouraging run by Gaelic Warrior, actually. I just thought at 2 out there was probably 50 yards there. It looked like he might be beating 15, 20 lengths.
Yes.
And he suddenly got back past Marine Nationale.
And that's the point for me that people mistake between Leopardstown and Cheltenham. I think for a 2-miler, you have to be going to win at the second last in Leopardstown to say you're actually a 2-mile chaser. By staying on late in the day at Leopardstown, it's 2 mile with a pretty stiff finish. To me, you're going back to 1.7.5 miles at Cheltenham. If you can't win at the second last at Cheltenham, at Leopardstown, you're not a 2-miler for Cheltenham.
But don't you think it was an odd race? I mean, the first 2 days here at Leopardstown, as elsewhere in Britain, were plagued by fog. And I just think the race didn't work out in an orthodox manner, and Gaelic Warrior was coming back from, as you said,
a layoff. Yeah, look, he surprised me when he won the Arkle, but I'm sticking by my guns.
Okay.
I think I look back at real 2-milers. They were all. You might not get home here and get empty, which means you're a Cheltenham 2-miler. But I think if you're not going to win at the second last in Leopardstown, you're not a 2-miler.
I think, Josh, the run from Marine Nationale was his best over fences so far, and that probably means he'll stay over fences rather than make a switch to hurdles.
Yeah, I think after the Supreme, everyone was hopeful that he'd make a really, really smart chaser. I think he has, but I still think he's got an awful lot to find. John Bon, I don't think we've ever seen him at his very best around Cheltenham, but he still leads the way. He was very good in the Schlur, he's more professional in the Schlur, and the likes of Gaelic Warrior, I wanted to see a bit of sparkle to really put it up to him. For me, I think the Irish challenge would be an Ergamine, not Marine or Gaelic Warrior at this point.
And I suppose we shouldn't forget El Fabiolo when we're talking about the Ryanair.
Yeah, very much
If
so.
he gets back.
Yeah, like it does seem, I'd say an Ergamine holds the cards there in Willie Mullins, and probably dependent on what he does in the Clarence House will depend where some of these other horses go. Like Gaelic Warrior could easily come here, win the 2 miler at the Dublin Racing Festival, but still go for the Ryanair, because an Ergamine could be the number 1.
You'd say that an Ergamine would have to still step up on his hilly way form, wouldn't he?
You would, although Bambridge didn't do half. Give it a boost, and that was his first start for plenty of time, so I'd have thought they'd have taken plenty of positives out of that.
You'd have to, but it depends on what way you read form. So you say, yeah, Bambridge boosts it, but do you say, ooh, did Dino Blue drag it back?
Yeah.
There's a couple of ways to look. I don't know, you can look at form every which way you want, and everyone has their own take on it, which is the beauty.
She ran a funny race though, because you would have wanted to have been on her at 2 out there on the 27th, and then she emptied, so I wouldn't know what's happened.
That first time tongue tie for me was wah, 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 and the way that she folded quite cheaply, having got herself into that position, you know, that makes me worry for her. Would she need a wind up or something like that? I don't know.
Not the right time of year for that.
No,
but,
exactly.
I don't know, and you can't say wait for drier ground. That said, she did stay towards the middle inside.
Yes.
And the winner and the second went wide.
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't race on the quickest strip of ground.
Well, that marks up Marine Nationale as well.
He was slapped down the inner, yeah. I don't know, it's a hard one. I thought he jumped better than he definitely jumped better than he did at Naas, Marine Nationale.
But he might encounter the flip side argument to the ground coin with Gaelic Warrior. He might encounter much more testing ground, and perhaps he does need top of the ground. I know he's won a Royal Bond in heavy.
I'd say it was definitely a race that threw up more questions than answers.
Certainly. Right, well, those are our thoughts then on the chasers. When you rejoin us, we'll be talking about the novice chasers. So, novice chasers, lots to get through here because I think we learned plenty. Just let's start with you. How did you see, let's go with the 2 milers first of all. How did you see this division going into Christmas?
I thought Majborough was leading the way. I know Lurdasud had won the Grade 1, but for me, with what he did last year and what he did on debut, he was so impressive. I thought he did it very easily, and there was plenty of improvement to come. So for me, he was leading the way. And I suppose with what Sergino did, it's going to be very difficult to keep that view. I think one thing that both have really boosted is the juvenile form this year. The juveniles look well above average. Sergino won the Fighting Fifth, won the Wayward Lad. Majborough's won really well on Chasing Debut. Burdett Road won the Great Wood, and Nürburgring won the Galway Hurdle. So they look above average. They've, over the years, struggled to step up into open company. But as far as novice chasing goes, Sergino was quite special. It
was spectacular, wasn't it? There was just that the first fence, you thought, oh, you know, because we've been hearing such great things about how he'd been schooling at home, and then the rest of it was just magnificent.
Yeah, it was very unlike Nicky Henderson to run him in a Wayward Lad, I think, on Chasing Debut, especially against a horse of Ballyburn's profile, who hadn't really seemed to done much wrong. I think you could maybe question the novice hurdle form on the other hand from last year, with Slade Steele being beaten twice, Mystical Power was beaten, a few others in that race. Firefox was beaten in the Drimmoor. But Ballyburn, to me, I think he still ran pretty well. I don't think he ran too badly. They beat the others a long way, but the writing was on the wall very early on. But Sergino just jumped immensely, and he really learned on the job. And then towards the end, it was. I say Nico de Boinville and Nicky Henderson got a real thrill watching and riding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nico de Boinville even suffered a Sprinter Sacra comparison afterwards, you know, took it without blinking, because that's how good that debut was. I still, like Josh, remained impressed with Ballyburn, who I think was never going to be suited to a speed-favouring track on good ground at Kempton when compared to Sergino.
It didn't convince me at Punchestown that he was going to be suited to any 2 mile not chase, Lydia, to tell you the truth.
And particularly not Kempton, therefore, in those conditions.
To me, and even watched him at Kempton, he hangs in the air, he jumps like a stair, and Gallopin hangs a little bit in the air at times, and I think he jumps like a stair at Ballyburn, so I wasn't at all disappointed with him, but I was blown away by Sergino. I thought he was brilliant. I didn't think Sprinter Sacra when I looked at him. I thought he's a 4-year-old. I thought Cotto Star. This day 19 years ago at Newbury, I think, or maybe 20 years ago. That's who reminded me of, because he is a 4-year-old. Sprinter Sacra was an older horse when he did what he did. I think for a 4-year-old to do what he did was magic.
He'll obviously get no weight for age help when he lines up against elders in the Arkle. Were you blown away too?
Yeah, he's just got a bit of X factor about him, this horse. I remember at trials day when he put Burdett Road away, and I suppose that was the first time everyone really took notice. He managed to win at Aintree when a lot of Nicky Henderson's horses were struggling, as well documented throughout the spring. But I think he didn't get maybe much plaudits for what he did in the Fighting Fifth. I think people were saying the race fell apart because Mystical Power didn't run very well, but like, he still beat Lump Sum.
Yeah,
I did have some conversation with myself though as to how I thought Mystical Power was going to beat him in the Fighting Fifth. That was the one conversation I had with myself on the way home here the other night.
Yeah, but there was plenty of people that did think that, and
Yeah.
he was beaten, miles out. But look, it's one of those, you just have a horse like this that he just brings a little bit extra to the table, and it's just that star quality there. And to beat a horse like Ballyburn the way he did is something special.
I guess it's going to be different conditions in the Arkle potentially. Again, we had a heavy ground Arkle. The days of having sort of good to softish ground at Cheltenham seem to be those of the past, so it could be very different. And there are other horses to talk about in this division. So I know he was brilliant, and I'm not arguing with that. But in the pocket, has still made a very good start to fences. Lotus Sud is still leading the British way. These are horses that we should be mentioning, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I'd say Dan Skelton wouldn't have been too impressed when Nicky Henderson mentioned the Kingmaker, because I think that was where he was going to go with Lotus Sud. So that'd be an interesting clash if they do meet before Cheltenham. But it's
they're both also potentially talking about the game spirit, aren't they?
yeah. And Nicky did use that as a novice with Sprinter, so
Yeah.
I suppose it's not impossible.
One will go one way, the other will go to the other race,
Yes,
and they'll
right.
both clash in the Arkle. In the pocket of Magsborough are both JPs, so one will go to Naas. Maybe they'll both go to Naas, can't see it. I think one will end up in Naas and one will go somewhere else. So I think come the Arkle, you could have 4 live ones, and what a clash that'll be.
Yeah.
Are there any other 2-milers that I've ignored at this point among the novice ranks that you want to push forward at this stage?
No, it seems like Magsburn in the pocket are leading the way over here, certainly. It's a real shame. I know Ruby's talked about it a bit, about the 2-mile Grade 1 getting scrapped here on Stephen's Day, which seems... I don't know what they're doing there, but...
Don't think they do either.
no.
It's probably better from an Anglo-Irish perspective, isn't it? It means that we had 2 Gordon runners propping up the Henry VIII. And, I think as a whole, maybe it works well, but whether it's what
I like the way you phrase that from an Anglo-Irish point of view. It's nice that the Irish are propping up English races. What you mean about it?
Got to say what you see. Right, okay. So we've got the staying novice chases to talk about, and I'm going to start by talking about Ballyburn because I think he enhanced his credentials for the Brand Advisory. I was actually impressed by how he hung in there when conditions were completely against him, against a brilliant younger rival.
Look, he's a quality horse. He's a good horse. He's just not a 2-miler. Yes, he will go up and trip. You would imagine that will be back here at the DRF, but he will step up to 2 miles and 5 furlongs, and hopefully get his season back on track. Thought he jumped well on the whole, bar the last, but I did like the way he found a leg.
So who else are you thinking about in this division? Obviously there's Dancing City, who we were underwhelmed with on debut.
But that said, he did take a couple of runs to win a hurdle race, so maybe it was good going of him to win first time up over fences. I thought in Pere Pass was good at Limerick, whether he goes across the water or not. Willie was humming and hawing yesterday.
He's talking about Fairy House Mobley, the 2.5 that Spillane's Tower won, or the Manifesto over 2.5 at Aintree.
Yeah, and I think it's the time we start giving Croke Park credit.
No.
Yeah. No?
But anyway, I'll let you discuss it first. Go on,
jumps.
You're a yes.
I was really, really warm on better days ahead going into the Christmas period. I thought that I was blown away with the chasing debut. I thought he beat Slade Still quite well. Obviously, Slade Still's not gone and franked that form much, but I do think we have to give some credit to Croke Park. He did it very well. Better days ahead came there, challenged towards late, and he still held on. I think that he's definitely improved for a fence. I'm not sure he's quite up to the standard of going to win a Brown Advisory.
Yeah, he just right a lot as well, and he can put the brakes on sometimes.
Goes left too, though. I was watching
Right,
that,
and left.
then he went left. It just to me looks like he's idle in front. But the one horse that really impressed me was the Jukebox Man.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. I
did.
love the way he measures his fences.
I love the way he travelled. He learned so much from Newbury, and Ben Jones did well on him at Newbury. He was gassy, he was exuberant. He got him back down the back straight, got him into a couple of fences, and it showed at Kempton the other day. He went around behind the bridle, just popped away from fence to fence, and when he wanted him, he picked up and went. I thought he was really good.
Okay, what's your take?
Yeah, I thought he was excellent. You would have looked at Newbury and you'd say he'd have no chances of really keeping that up in a Brown Advisory. As for the way he raced at Kempton, was an awful lot more kind of tractionable for that sort of a race. So I'd have thought, that they said that they potentially are going to go straight there, I think, to Cheltenham, which I'm not sure. I'd always like one more run.
So would I.
Potentially, just that little bit more experience.
Particularly in a Brown advisory.
Exactly, which is obviously can sometimes be a gruelling race, especially if you're on that softer, heavy ground. So, you know, it's potentially a ballsy way of going about it from Ben Pauling, but this horse was very, very unlucky not to win the Albert Bartlett last year. Kind of by far the best horse in that race, really. And maybe compensation awaits this year.
And what's your Croke Park take? Because, I mean, for starters, I don't know what happened between 3 out and 2 out. I mean, you know, they disappeared into the fog for much of the race. I find it very difficult to have a firm opinion on what the hell went on.
I loved the manoeuvre 5 out to 4 out. Sam Ewing pushed forward, got over in front of Daddy Gilligan and got Danny back outside him.
Yes.
Thought that was a proper bit of race riding.
Yeah.
But the other one, I'm back on the jukebox, man. If you don't want to go 3 miles again between now and Cheltenham, is there a 2.5 or a 2.5 novice in Cheltenham? And in England between now and then?
Come to the flow
Sandown.
gas.
Silly Isles.
Silly Isles, yeah.
I think that's the race for them
Yeah.
if they were to go again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting with Ballyburn as well, and I suppose in Perry Pass, because they're both in this division. Maybe the Ballymore as a race has changed over the last 8 or 9 years. I remember people used to talk about it as a champion hurdle, almost, you know, the
Yes.
speed horse would go to the Ballymore and the staying horse would go to the Supreme. I don't think we've really had a 2-miler at this stage of their career since Faheen won the Ballymore. The likes of City Island, Sam Crow, Envoi Alem, Bob Ollinger and Perry Pass, Ballyburn, they're all turning out to be 2.5 to 3 mile chases. So that race might slightly be throwing up a different type of profile of horse. And as a result, I mean, Sam Crow was tried at 2 miles, Ballyburn's been tried at 2 miles, and Perry Pass has been tried at 2 miles, but none of them have really been able to go that way, and they've all progressed for further.
Yeah, but I suppose the flip side to that as well is that you can learn something starting out over fences over 2 miles. I mean, even Joseph O'Brien was talking about dropping Banbridge back down to 2 miles for the hilly way, meant that actually his jumping was on point for the King George. So, you know, that's another angle. So you never got to finish the Croke Park view.
No, well, as you said it, that there wasn't much that you could see for half the race, to be honest. I was a little bit disappointed with Better Days Ahead. I thought he lugged in behind on the run-in, having looked at it back. I know it was one of those where at the line you're there thinking he might get there in another couple of strides. I think Croke Park probably only does enough in front, and I'm not sure Better Days Ahead really wanted to go by him.
Okay. Any others novice chasers from the period? We had De Capo yesterday, Keith de Bourbon making his chase debut.
No, thought they were all 144-ish hurdlers and they came up there, not that much between them. Shot put aside, Keith de Bourbon, all right, De Capo had the race course or race fitness, but no, none of those jumped out at me. But I do think the benefit of running over shorter distances is it does sharpen you, it does teach you to do things, and also you're not going to the well. You're not going those really extreme distances. The French never go there. Why do we?
And I suppose, which again underlines your point about the 3 mile sticking around for the novice chasers at Leopardstown and the 2 mile being deleted.
To improve the breed, to improve the horse, to give them the chance to last them forever. You don't want to be going marathon trips.
And I guess if the characteristic of the Ballymore is changing, that's kind of down to Willie Mullins, isn't it, really? Because he's kind of like pushing his pawns to different squares and essentially deciding what the character of a race is going to be.
As you should.
Yeah, no, actually, it's not. It's not a criticism. I'm just saying that he's basically in charge of how the race might be evolving. Right. Okay. So that's our thoughts about the novice chasers. Next up is the first part of our look at the hurdlers. So it's the staying hurdlers for our first half look at the hurdling division. Chupu Josh was the reigning champ coming into this. He didn't deign to join us over Christmas. Have you seen anything to challenge him as far as you're concerned?
I'd say Chupu had a really nice Christmas watching the racing. I thought Home by the Lee's probably the second best staying hurdler in Ireland. I think he confirmed that. The long walk there was loads in it, jumping the last. I'm not sure any of them are going to get near Tuipu if he turns up in the same form. So for me, I didn't really see much changing in that division.
Okay. Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, very hard to disagree. Like Home by the Lee was good here, but I'd be a little bit disappointed. I've very much got a soft spot for Xander Clegane, but he's not really a Grade 1 horse, and he travelled into the race like the best horse yesterday, cut out pretty quickly, but I'm not sure whether that form is really, you know, what Bob Ollinger doesn't really stay 3 miles seemingly, and Home by the Lee is the best of them, but he's a fair bit behind Tuipu on known form.
How ground dependent do you think Home by the Lee is? Because I know they switched the headgear as well, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Have they gotten the key to Home by the Lee?
Well, they've ridden him more patiently.
Yeah,
He doesn't like leading, does he?
He does, and it just looks like they're all the time learning about him. JJ Slevin was pretty adamant when he pulled up yesterday that he hadn't excelled on him I think he said 3 times in the stairs hurdle.
Yeah, I think I was about to say he's had so many goes at that.
Yeah, and he kind of got the vibe from him coming off the track that he thinks that they've eventually figured home by the Lee out. Hopefully they have, because otherwise Tupu is a good thing.
Okay, the Stayers Hurdle tends to be a race that rewards horses that have got maturity, that have become hardened. So, Josh, do you not think there's a chance that Crambo in Hidden Valley Lake might be better this season around? No. Just say no. If you think no, just say no.
You don't need to be polite.
No, sorry, Lydia.
No need to be polite. I just think that, you know, if you think about Chihupu himself, didn't quite get home in the Stayers Hurdle the year before, did get home the following year. I do think it's a race that rewards that.
Yeah, I just wouldn't say, with the greatest respect to Beauport, he shouldn't have been leading over the last in a long walk hurdle, I don't think. And they've just finished a bit like a handicap, really. And Strong Leader, the best horse in the race on paper, ran no race.
He's going to have a wind operation, isn't he, because he would seem to have run too badly to be true. We were flying a kite before the Christmas period that Corbett's Cross might switch back to
I'm
this
still
discipline.
flying.
Me too. Me too. I feel like that's where he's going to be headed.
Look, who knows? But to me, again in the King George, just way too high in the air over the first couple of fences. That's just him. That's in him. And I know if I was riding him, that's where I'd like to be going with him.
Yeah, and he'd be a player, wouldn't he, Andrew? I could see Buddy One switching back to hurdles as well, but I don't think he'll be a player.
No, he badly needs to go back hurdling, yes. The division needs a couple of these horses to come back, and Corbett's Cross does have that little bit of ability that maybe he'd get into the frame, but Tupu's he's just the horse to beat.
I think the run in the Johnstown Novice Hurdle cost Corbett's Cross the Alba Bartlett the year he ran it. He ran way too keen after running a 2-mile Novice Hurdle before that. I think with the campaign he's had now, he'd be much easier horse to ride in the Stayers Hurdle.
Well, we're coming up to the time of year when, you know, resolutions are made and people change their minds and, you know, revise what they've been doing. Maybe they will with Corbett's Cross. We're going to end this section by talking about the juveniles. Going into this East India Dock was the division topper. Have you seen anything, Ruby, from the juveniles, your favourite division, I know, that might be able to top that horse?
I think as bad as the fog was, that was the worst race it was absolutely worse for. So I do
Hello
know that
Neighbours
Gavin
race.
Cromwell's won and Willie's were second and third, but what about the race, I couldn't tell you anything.
Yeah, like I'd wish to say I saw it, but I couldn't see it.
We know the result, that's about all we know.
Everything changed, didn't it, around about 2 out? You know, they went into the fog, they came out of the fog, and suddenly one horse that you were thinking, OK, she's staying on, but really, is she going to get there, was fighting out at the finish.
Yeah, Liveg Allen ran a blinder, so did Sonny Bill, but look, you can talk about it, but we didn't see it, so I didn't anyway.
Nietzsche Has is the one that we'd all be saying, but apparently he's going to be retired to stud after winning the finale.
Slightly disappointing, but
Yeah.
I mean, if he's untired, I can understand. He was very good. It's just a shame we're not going to see him again.
Don't settle for this, young people. No. Do not settle for premature retirement.
I'll
of
be over
racehorses.
to France next week.
Yeah, do, with a placard. They
Campaign
like that
outside the
kind of
yard.
thing.
Yeah.
OK, so that is the end of our hurdlers section. When you rejoin us, we'll be picking up on the same theme. So we resume, and you'll have spotted, you continuity fiends, the change from before, but my co-hosts, Ruby, Andrew and Josh, are still the same. And we're going to kick off in the final part of this show with the 2-mile hurdlers. Now, this division was laid out like a patient etherised on the table. Full voltage has been applied over the last 4 days. Josh, start with you. What do you make of it? Where do you see it standing now?
It's been shaken up. I personally thought Lossiemouth held the upper hand going into the Christmas period. I thought with the question marks around Constitution Hill and Brighter Days Ahead having beaten State Man, I thought Lossiemouth, with what she did over 2.5 to Tupu, was the leading player. But Constitution Hill put her in a place. Whether she was at her absolute best is still yet to be decided. But today as well, we've seen a mare do something quite special, and I would absolutely love to see Brighter Days Ahead versus Constitution Hill. And to be honest with you, as much as he's a superstar, I'm not sure where I'd go with that. I thought they were both so good.
Right, OK. I do have a strong view, but I'm going to keep a lid on it. Andrew, what's your view?
Yeah, like you'd have gone into the Christmas period and Willie Mullins would have been looking at it with Lossiemouth and State Man, thinking he had a very strong hand on it. Constitution Hill was good. Lossiemouth, for me, looked like she was beaten relatively far out, to be honest. Just even the way the race went early on, she usually travels with an awful lot of zest. Didn't feel she did. And Brighter Days Ahead here today was absolutely superb. Now, it felt a little bit like watching an Aidan O'Brien kind of flash team tactics with Danny Gilligan out in front, and they seemed to get the tactics spot on to suit her. She jumped an awful lot better than she did at Punchestown. She was slick, she was quick. and she's put in a performance there which was very reminiscent of when Apple's Jade won an Irish champion hurdle there a couple of years ago.
I think it was even better than that myself. I thought Brighter Days Ahead was incredible. She obviously had the race set up, as Andrew's just described, with King of Kingsfield, setting a pace that she needed. She didn't like leading last time. I think she prefers to go left-handed. That was monstrous what she did today.
I thought the very same. I thought the speed they went, but it was obvious that that's what was going to happen. King of Kingsfield had gone chasing. No, what was going to happen was obvious. Not the outcome was never obvious, but what the way the race was going to pan out was fairly obvious. King of Kingsfield went a really good gallop. I did think, watching it live at 34 miles an hour at Leopardstown, they were going too quick, but she could have went quicker, and she just found it so easy to follow her stable companion, the ease at which she took it off him, and I thought she was brilliant. Now I think personally Stateman has underperformed way more than Lossiemouth did. I think he's run no race. To say the Stateman will finish behind Winterfog, no, can't have
He's
that.
tried to bridge the gap, hasn't he? There was
Doesn't
nothing
matter.
to help him.
He could bridge the gap, do what he wants. He should be able to beat Winterfog 7 days a week, and he didn't. I think he's really underperformed. Mythical Power, a bit like the fighting 50, was nowhere to be seen. She was brilliant. Brighter Days Ahead, and there's no other way of putting it.
I want to understand how they're obviously talking about the mare's hurdle, although Gordon Elliott seems to keep softening on that position about whether he's going to go mares or champion. He's got to go champion. If they went champion, could they set up a champion hurdle like they set up that race? It's more difficult, isn't it?
No.
Not even on the undulations?
No.
You might need a couple of them? No? You think it's
No,
so
I think King
straightforward?
of Kingsfield's good enough horse to be able to bring her to the back of the third last hurdle in a champion hurdle. When you're running a pacemaker, there's no point in running a dud. You have to run one that's good enough, and he will be able to bring her to the third last. Halfway down the hill in Cheltenham, he'll bring her.
The fractions that she went today were phenomenal, and they were the fractions that Lossiemouth just couldn't live with. You know, coming out of the Christmas hurdle, I was thinking, okay, they're not going to go like that in the champion hurdle. But if Brighter Days turned up, they are going to go like that in the champion hurdle. So, you know, it's thrown it all up in the air.
It has, and Burdett Road, to be fair to him, I kind of questioned him being so close to Kempton, but he's just an improving 5-year-old.
Yes.
So you stick him in the mix with a pacemaker for Brighter Days Ahead, and he could have a really strongly run champion hurdle, which will suit Constitution Hill as well. Now, I didn't, like the guys have lost him out in pole position. I didn't think she had done anything in her life to suggest she should be in pole position. I think beating Tehupu in a crawl at Fairyhouse was irrelevant, and to me she just got her eyes opened. She had the most to improve. At least Brighter Days Ahead had beaten Stateman in the Morgiana, a genuine 2-miler. I don't think Lossiemouth had won any race at the calibre of the races the other horses had.
I tend to agree, but I came out of the Christmas hurdle thinking, actually, I can see that Lossiemouth can do better in the champion hurdle until this happened. Because I think the pace wouldn't put her out of the comfort zone as she would before. She got within 2.5 lengths of Constitution Hill. No horse has got within 9 lengths of him over 2 miles before. Nico de Boinville had to draw the whip. And how much improvement do you think there is in Constitution Hill? Because he'd have had to have been pretty much there, wouldn't he?
He would have. I think Lossiemouth, I think where she goes could largely depend where Brighter Days Ahead goes as well. Because I think if Willie was to say mare's hurdle quite early on, then I think Brighter Days Ahead's going to have a top opponent whichever way she goes. Therefore, you may as well maybe take in the champion hurdle.
Did you say if Willie says where he's going early on?
That's a very good point.
He did, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah. I thought I was hearing things there.
If Gordon second guesses and decides that he thinks Lossiemouth will go to the mare's hurdle, then maybe Brighter Days Ahead goes to the champion. Listening to what Connections were saying, I think they just want to win at Cheltenham with her. They were probably a bit stung by last year. How she got beat by Golden Ace in hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think they would have definitely ran that race slightly differently, but wherever she turns up, she's going to be a real massive competitor. And if there's a race where Lossiemouth and Constitution Hill go to the champion and she turns up a mare's hurdle, then it should just be a penalty kick from what we've seen today.
She shouldn't be in a mare's hurdle though. Like, I know she can run in the race, but you can't come here, win by 30 lengths and run in a mare's hurdle.
Quite right.
It wouldn't really sit massively well.
Well, you
I
can't.
don't think. Yeah, I know you
You
can.
just enter and you press declare.
Yeah,
and
no,
you're
I
going.
know
Andrew's
you
got his
can.
placard out.
I know you can.
Very easy.
I know you can. But
Andrew's got his placard out. He's saying down with that.
I just think.
Seriously, you're standing in the number 2 in Cheltenham and you're thinking, I'm running the other race.
Yeah.
You tell me who was second in the last 10 champion hurdles.
Well, I probably couldn't. I probably could.
Exactly.
After.
Second is nowhere.
But she'd win. For me, she's in
She
pole
could.
position.
I agree with you.
I think she should be favourite. Now, she isn't, obviously, because there is the doubt about where she might run. And I'm not disrespecting Constitution Hill because, you know, I think he's one of the best hurdlers I've ever seen. Best hurdler since Isterbrack for me. But it's been a while now since he's shown that. 2 seasons in a row he did, but we haven't seen it for 3 races. And we've just seen a mare do that he's going to have to concede £7 to.
I think he'll do better. I think it was his first run in 12 months. To me, obviously, he was grossly undercooked when he galloped at Newbury and fell in a hole beside Sergino. Regardless of what Sergino has done since, I think he was obviously quite heavy then. I think he'll do better. I love the way he had a good look at the last, pricked his ears, the ease which he went through the race. I think he'll improve a good bit. And he's getting a bit older, and as horses get older, they don't tend to get flashier. And I think I'd love to try and get by him all the same. I think it'll be some race, but I wouldn't be dishing him anyway.
Oh no, I'm not disrespecting him, but you know, he's got to be nearly there to be able to sustain that pace and finish off his race, even if he did take a blow going to the last.
Yeah, I still think he'll improve. You can't beat match practice.
I think the Irish champion hurdle is going to be fascinating, especially who turns up from Willie's. Will it be Stateman? Will it be Lossiemouth? Could we see a Lossiemouth versus Bright Days Ahead before Cheltenham? It's probably unlikely. I suspect we might get a rematch of what happened today.
Yeah.
But that's going to massively dictate.
Do you think she'll turn up here in 4 weeks' time after that performance?
I don't know.
I don't
she'll
either.
Go straight to Cheltenham.
For instance, why would she not, in your opinion?
Because when you run as hard as she ran today, the recovery is key to what happens to her. And you look at all the massive performances, and I was a sucker for it. I fell into it. Vautour was unbelievable one day in entry, and I rode him back at Punchestown. He couldn't produce it again. I was a sucker for falling into those huge performances and then expecting them to back it up. She'll need time to get over that.
Yeah, and I expect Lossiemouth will go to the International.
Willie kind of hinted that. She'll have all the penalties in the International this year, which he keeps forgetting.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Right, winner right now of the Champion Hurdle, Josh?
Constitution Hill.
Constitution Hill.
Brighter days ahead.
Brighter days ahead. Oh my gosh, we've got a Let's Talk Racing Road to Cheltenham divide here.
They just haven't got enough experience to realise.
It's a face-off now.
Well, when Willie declares Lossiemouth of the Mayor's Hurdle in January, then we'll know.
What you'd really like to do is when they're going on Run and No Bet, back both Lossiemouth and Brightest Days Ahead for the Champion Hurdle, provided Constitution Hill is still favourite. That's what I'd like to do. Anyway, that's our thought about the hurdling division, the 2-mile hurdle division, which has caught light. We've been waffling on about the 2-mile hurdlers for such a long time. There's only really time that remains for each of us to pick out a novice hurdler that we were most impressed with this week. I'm going to start with you, Ruby.
I thought the new line was brilliant in the Challow yesterday. I thought the ease with which he did it. I know the Challow can be a graveyard for horses going forward as novice hurdlers, but I thought he was really impressive.
Yeah, he's gone to favourite for the Turners, hasn't he? I think we've been calling it. Were we
No,
calling it the
he should be
Ballymore
going
earlier?
he should be going to the Albert Bartlett.
You think he wants 3?
Challow winners, that's what they want.
Yeah.
It's the mistake that's made year in, year out.
Yeah. And how about you, Andrew?
I'd agree with Ruby on the new line, but I thought the 2 horses that ran in the maiden hurdle here yesterday, Cap Doty and a Cocktail Divan for Henry de Bromhead, I think they're 2 pretty smart horses. I'd like to see them back at the Dublin Racing Festival in a month's time.
And what trip are you thinking for each of those ultimately?
They probably look both like 2.5 to 3 milers at this stage. Cap Doty fell down the back at Navan when it looked like he was going to win very easily, to be honest. It was nice to see him put it all together, and the de Bromhead horse, there was good whispers on track for that horse. He looks a nice horse as well.
Okay, Josh, for you?
Like the guys, I was really impressed with the new line. I thought 2 that were interesting were Cupet de Board in the first race on Stephen's Day here. Didn't particularly jump, but had a massive engine, and then Final Demand yesterday at Limerick did it really nicely, and thought that he had the class to step down to 2 as well, even though he was impressive at 2.5.
Yeah, he went.
I thought you told us to pick 1. I thought you told us to pick 1. They've had 3 each.
They're switched on, you know.
They're not. They just can't do what they're told.
That Jasmine Defoe form is looking quite nice, isn't it? After the Enabler and Work Ahead both as one. Bearing in mind that Jasmine Defoe didn't jump.
Didn't see him running this week though.
No, he's going to be in the Lauders of
You
Nace,
told us to
isn't
pick
he?
1 from this week.
I did do that.
Stick to your own guidelines.
I should have mentioned Potter's Charm. We won the Form B as well. I thought he was pretty impressive, what I could see of it. Right, we've come to the end of the Let's Talk Road to Cheltenham. Thank you to Josh and thank you to Andrew. It's great to see you again and have you. Let's make this an annual thing, shall we? Lovely to see you, Ruby, as well. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you rejoin us for Road to Cheltenham on Thursday, January the 2nd. In the meantime, it's a happy new year from us. And what have you learned? You must watch Father Ted. Happy New Year!